Right. Thanks everybody for joining us again for another WKS podcast. This time I'm with Steve Jones. How are you doing?
I'm all right. Actually, Stevie Jones is my is
Stevie
my sort of,
Jones. Okay,
yeah.
brilliant.
The reason being is that there's a lot more Steve Jones out there, and I was actually confused by the guy from the Sex Pistols a couple of times, believe it or not.
Okay.
So,
All right. Brilliant. Brilliant. So how did you get into music in the first place? Where did it start for you then?
well, music at an early age. My uncle was a fantastic pianist, sort of classically trained, but was really into jazz and blues. And I just used to watch him when I was sort of really young, about 5 or 6, enthralled. He was incredible because he could just play the piano and merge Elton John into jazz and blues and go off on one. And it was all about from the soul watching him. So that, in terms of experiencing live music, I say him, but my parents used to play some fantastic music at home, everything from Van Morrison to Neil Young and Supertramp and all kinds of stuff. They were the key earliest memories of me. And then later, my other uncle used to come round. He had an amazing taste in music. He used to come around with C90s back in the day and give them to my dad and then to me. And that just opened up my world, really. That was the start.
Okay, brilliant. So, do you, performance-wise, you're a solo artist, I'm assuming. Do you guitar or?
Yes, I started off playing bass guitar, actually. My first bands, I was playing bass and I was a lyricist. I guess I was a bit like the sort of Richie Manic in the group. I didn't have any vocal input, but I used to write the lyrics. And then when my first band sort of split up, I decided that I wanted to have a bit more control and change where I was going. And then I started picking up the acoustic. So I've been playing acoustic guitar as my songwriting tool for over 30 years now, and I've never really ventured down electric. It's always been acoustic.
Okay, so who sort of inspired you then to play music? Who are your sort of musical heroes, if you like?
Well, if you go back to my uncles, obviously I've mentioned a few things that I sort of absorbed then, but the uncle who brought around the C90s, he said, "Oh, what sort of music do you like then?" I says, "Well, I do remember when I was about 6 or 7 years old watching this guy called David Bowie on Top of the Pops." And I said, "There's a song about a spaceman." He goes, "Oh yeah, that's David Bowie." He says, "I shall bring you some of his music." And it was like every time he came up with my auntie, he used to give me a C90 with new Bowie albums on either side. And of course, as you know full well, Bowie is so diverse in his musical tastes that it just blew my mind because every album was different. And also reading up on Bowie as well, I started to, I think he also gave me a Bowie book for one of my birthday or Christmases. And that opened my mind because I was reading about Lou Reed and Iggy Pop and Andy Warhol. And, it's like the tree just grows, and that all starts from Bowie. So that was the main catalyst, really, for everything. But later on, I was a lot more into I was into everything, really. I like rock and metal through friends at school who, we used to swap albums or give people C90s and stuff. So I liked a lot of, everything from Zeppelin to AC/DC to Sabbath. But I also absolutely loved the Clash. I was and I saw the Clash in 1982. They were my second gig. My first gig was actually the Who, which my dad took me to see. So there's all kinds of stuff being thrown at me, and it was very hard for me to sort of. Back then, as I'm sure you remember, it was all very much more tribal. You had to be something or the other, didn't you? And I wasn't a mod. I tried it. I wasn't a definitive punk, the Mohawk stuff. Bowie was my main idol, but I love so much other music as well. So yeah, all kinds really, Craig. And I think I should sort of round that bit off by saying that New Model Army were the band that really changed my life. In that when I was 16, 17, I bought their first album, and I went and saw them, and that's when I decided to really master the bass and form a band. And watching them live blew my mind. And within a year, I'd left home and was wanting to do it full time. You know.
Wow, brilliant. So, how would you describe your music now then? But I know it's difficult sometimes. Say that again.
Very difficult.
Okay.
That isn't a genre. It might be. No. Hard to define. I have that question all the time. How would you describe your music? And really, acoustic singer-songwriter bass. It's acoustic bass really. And when you hear, because the band that I'm in now is Stevie Jones and the Wildfires, and that's been my band for the last 10 years. So we're quite rock or alternative rock, but it's all centered around acoustic songwriting. So yeah, acoustic singer-songwriter, but there's quite a lot of Americana influence in there as well, because I love Ryan Adams and I love Counting Crows. I've also picked up a lot of folk over the years, because when I first started playing, I was going regularly to my local folk clubs. People have said to me that I sometimes sound like the guy out of the Levellers, and that might be to do with my sort of folk influence on my vocals. But I also love a lot of sort of Irish influence type rock, like Hot House Flowers, and I was a huge fan of a band called Energy Orchard, who were kicking around from Belfast at the tail end of the 80s, and they kind of changed my world really, because they were very much sort of acoustic bass rock, and there's a lot of stuff kicking around there. But if you listen to my band's albums, you would probably go, yeah, there's quite a lot of rock in there at the moment. So hence the Grunge Bible T-shirt, because grunge is another huge influence as well. With, the early 90s, Stone Temple Pilots and Counting Crows, bands like that, still inspire me today.
Right. So it brings me on to the question about what music have you got out there at the moment, and where can people sort of hear it?
Well, if I suppose the main hub would be steviejones.com, because there you'll see what I'm up to. I'm not just solo, like I said. I've got my band Stevie Jones and the Wildfires, so I'm doing gigs and recording under both those umbrellas. Facebook page, Stevie Jones and the Wildfires, or Stevie Jones Solo Acoustic. So yeah, they're the sort of two hats that I've got on primarily. But having said that, I've been a working musician, trying to earn some income from it over the years. And as we all know, trying to do that for original music is really hard. Obviously, any PRS payments I get, but I do go out. And I have been going out for a long time now, doing covers gigs, solo or in a duo called the Waltzers, and we sort of focus on 60s to 90s classics, really. All stuff I like, really. I've never been a covers artist that's sort of, gone and learned all of the current hits. I'm not really a wedding singer as such. I'm the 60s to 90s guy who can stand in the corner and churn out some classics, really.
Fair play, mate. Yeah. So how, songwriting wise and stuff, how did the lockdown affect you?
Oh, it was a tough one, because I'm sure many musicians who you've been interviewing over the recent weeks have been explaining to you their experiences. Some people who I know, go, oh, that's great, loving lockdown, I'm off work, I can focus on, I can write 3 albums, and they're picking up the guitar all the time, and they've got a recording studio and they've loved it. And for me, I lost a whole year's worth of gigs, just about half my income, you know, all my covers gigs, and also some great festival slots and stuff with the band, etc. So it really sent me on a bit of a downer, and I was like a sort of rabbit in the headlights. I just couldn't get my head around how much everything had changed, and my whole sort of bottom fell out my world, because I'm not a bedroom guitarist. I'm not someone who picks up the guitar just for the hell of it every day. I'm not a home studio techie type guy. I'm a live performer, and I thrive from that. And so it really affected me. I hardly played at all for the first sort of period of it, for the first sort of 3 months. And I just focused, well, what can I do? And I went back and looked at my back catalogue, and I re-released a couple of old albums and repackaged stuff, and started doing some old lyric videos, and that got me going. And then eventually it got to the summertime last summer, and we were able to go out and gig a little bit, and just getting back on the stage just for a couple of gigs was just incredible. You know, that's, you know, so I'm lucky I had that little window where I could do it.
Right. Yeah. You mentioned before we started recording about you've been doing some sort of like live online stuff during the lockdown. You know, how did that go?
Yeah, well, that came about really. I was, like I say, I was looking to get a couple of sort of gigs in some back gardens of pubs over the summer, and I was also able to rehearse with the band again. And we've got a fairly new lineup now. A sort of new guitarist and drummer in the band, and we sort of, you know, got a new sound we want to work on. So we were able to do that. So we did a couple of live streams with the band, as well as a couple of gigs. I also I was able to finally focus on writing some songs, and I was able to record a brand new album, which I did in the October. But come October, everything shut down again, and you know, I wanted to keep playing, and yeah, it was we were able to rehearse, which was good. But when it got to Christmas, I thought, right, I'll do a live stream for Christmas. So I set up a tripod like I'm talking to you now, and I did it on Boxing Day, and it was good fun, you know. And I had quite a good number of people watching me, and I thought, right, I'm going to start talking about my history of how I got into music, and I'm going to go through the years in different weeks, and just get through it, just to keep myself focused, to keep myself playing the old songs, talking like how I'm with you now, and being able to engage with my audience. And it was something I wasn't particularly keen on initially, because, as I'm sure you fully remember, and many listeners will, when lockdown first happened, every man and his dog was doing horrible karaoke, weren't they? It was horrific. Do you remember that? I mean, it was just like my news feed was just full up with everyone like just doing karaoke. And what happened is Facebook, I'm not a huge fan of Facebook, but they actually did something with the licensing, and they basically stopped people from doing the backing track thing. And it was a huge cull. They all just suddenly stopped. So I wasn't seeing all this dreadful karaoke with people asking for donations as well.
Yeah.
And it stopped. So it kind of, I thought, well, there's a window now. People might actually want to listen to someone who's genuine with a guitar and can pick up, rather than just someone, you know, just keeping themselves occupied when they're bored on furlough. So yeah, come the Christmas anyway, like I say, I was doing it every week. And this year, up until, where are we, end of April, up until about 3 weeks ago, I was doing it every week. So I did about 15 streams, I think. And it was really good. It was really good. It kept me going. I was getting donations. I was selling merch. You know, I was selling some of the re-release CDs that I did. People were generous. People from all over were pulling together and asking me questions about my music, and I was giving background to songs. And one of the key things was that, as you know, as you know full well yourself, if you're at a gig in a noisy pub and someone's on stage trying to tell a story, a deep and meaningful thing in the background of their song, those moments can get lost in a live music venue unless you're in a very quiet acoustic setting. So doing the streaming gave me an opportunity to give deep background onto the songs, and I think it illuminated quite a lot of people into what the hell I'm going on about with my music.
Fantastic, absolutely fantastic. So what's next then for Stevie Jones? Where, you know, what's your plans?
Well, now we're back rehearsing. We rehearsed last week with the band. We're rehearsing tomorrow. We've got a couple of new songs in the pipeline. I've actually got, I can show you it now. If you look at that board there, that is actually my kind of notes on songs. That's my guitar over there.
Yeah.
Those notes have been sitting on there for months. And I'm supposed to be going through all of that and to kind of tidy them up and make them into songs, because they're all the seeds of the songs.
Right.
So I'm kind of steadily, hopefully, working through those, turning to band songs with view to recording an album over the next few months. Record it ourselves initially. We've got a few things that have come in, a few festivals, a couple of gigs. I haven't been pushing it too hard looking for stuff, because the main thing is we want to be writing. And I've got some solo stuff as well. So, you know, it's there. I just want to keep chipping away at it. And sometimes as a songwriter, you can put yourself under real pressure. You feel guilty if you haven't been busy, but sometimes you're just not in the mood, you know? So
yeah.
I find that side of it hard. You know, I do suffer from guilt if I'm not being creative.
Wow. Okay, so I'm going to ask you. It's the final question now, and I ask everybody. Okay, is there anybody you'd like to thank for you being here musically now?
Wow. Whew, that's a tough one. Wow. I mean, game changers, it would have to be Bowie, would be thanking Bowie for just being who he was, because it wasn't just about the music with him. It was just giving you freedom to be who you wanted to be, you know, without sticking to categories or genres. And also personally, you know, sexuality as well. He was someone who did sort of come forward and say, I mean, I think he said, "I am gay" or something. He was just trying to be controversial, but he was bisexual, and he did cross-dress a little bit. He was, you know, and he wore makeup, and he was, you know, he was alternative, and you know, he just did what he wanted to do. You know, you could never tell the next record what he was gonna do. And as a teenager growing up, I could identify with that, because, you know, I was a bit all over the place. I did have different types of friends here and there. I could identify with different types of people. And at a time when it was quite tribal, like I said earlier on, he was someone who you know, was a real support for me. And so yeah, I would thank David Bowie.
Brilliant, absolutely brilliant, mate. Great interview. Thank you so much for that, Stevie, and good luck with everything.
Thank you, Craig. Be nice to check in with you in a few months' time, and you can see how I'm getting on.
Yeah, no, anytime, mate. Yeah, brilliant. All right, look after yourself.
All right, cheers, buddy. Thank you.
Cheers, mate.